$15 minimum wage advocates are vowing to keep up the pressure on elected officials in Baltimore after the city's Democratic mayor vetoed a $15 minimum wage bill last week. Supporters say now is the time for the public to lobby their city council people to support an override of the measure.
Time is not only running out, time doesn't even exist.
Mary Pat Clark has introduced a $15 minimum wage bill for the past 2 years. She says the measure can't be watered down any more than it already is. With exemptions for businesses with under 50 employees, they reach $15 in 2026.
And there's not much we can do with the legislation to have it mean anything. We can't extend it any longer than we have. We can't prepare for it any longer than we have. We can't take care of the small businesses any better than we have.
And it's already a compromise measure.
It's already a way big compromise measure.
We got a response from new councilman Chris Burnett. He supports overriding the mayor's veto.
We want small business owners to thrive, but their business model also can't be rooted in paying people a poverty wage. Right? You can't have that. If that's your business model, then you should consider a new one.
Clark said she's disheartened to see the failure of an initiative that's aimed to help address some of the deep inequities laid bare by the April 2015 death of Freddie Gray in police custody and subsequent uprising.
We talk and talk and talk about the aftermath of Freddie Gray and the need to change our ways in dramatic fashion here in Baltimore in order to bring the city together and in fairness and justice. The Department of Justice has its requirements, and I think that's a positive step in the right direction. But aside from that, what do we have that's really any different in people's lives?
The mayor is set to introduce her veto to the city council on Monday, April 3rd. According to the city charter, the council must hold a vote to override the veto in 20 days, but the next council meeting isn't scheduled for 21 days from now. So a special session must be called, either by the city council president, who's already said he'll decline to do so, or 10 council members. Clark says she's working on gathering those votes now.
But I'm hoping to have 10, so that we can at least bring a close to this chapter if we lose, or win if we can.
What's your message for supporters of the $15 minimum wage? What should they be doing now to ensure that a vote even happens?
Well, you could ask all the council members to please support a special meeting that meets the deadline.
For their part, advocates of a $15 minimum wage have vowed to continue to pressure city council members, the city council president, and mayor to call for a special meeting and support overriding the veto. As of right now, the council does not have the 12 necessary votes. In a statement, Courtly C.D. Witherspoon, who was organizing a rally at 5:30 for City Hall, said, quote, "I think we shouldn't allow the mayor to renege on her campaign promise, particularly when she received campaign donations, in-kind donations, and campaign volunteers from organized labor under the contingency that she'd work diligently to pass the $15 living wage." Activists also say they may disrupt the mayor's public appearances to show their disapproval of her veto. When the measure passed in the city council, it had 12 supporters, enough votes to override a mayoral veto. But as the Jewish Times first reported, Ed Reisinger, who we reached by phone, says he no longer supports $15 minimum wage because the finance department calculated it would cost the city more than $100 million over the next 4 years.
It's that, plus there's a lot of other variables. I mean, I voted twice. You know, things are fluid. I mean, I changed my mind, but, I mean, that's it.
But many analysts say this calculation is deeply flawed and contradictory.
Yeah, the finance department's report is full of holes and questionable methodological choices to the extent that they reveal any sort of methodology. And they assert that businesses will no longer locate in the city as a result of the higher minimum wage. They simultaneously assert that all of these low-wage workers from the surrounding jurisdictions will flood into the city to seek jobs, therefore crowding out the local workforce that the bill is intended to help. And I just think it's interesting that you can't have all the jobs leaving the city and all of the workers from outside the city flooding into the city to take jobs. Those two assertions can't coexist.
Catherine Pugh dismissed questions by The Real News challenging the economic justifications she provided for vetoing a bill she said she would sign during her campaign. The mayor's spokesperson said she's tired of hearing The Real News question the data she based her decision on.
But for you all, she's explained it. Go to the city council. Ask them if they're organizing to override that budget. Ask them if they're ready to override it. That's where your question should be aimed, not trying to be the brightest student in the class and show the mayor how much research you've done. Okay?
That comment came after repeated questions by The Real News challenging the mayor's assertion a $15 minimum wage would kill jobs and increase unemployment. Peer-reviewed studies of nationwide minimum wage raises have not found those impacts anywhere wages have been raised.
I base my decision on the fact that when I talk to my surrounding jurisdictions, nobody is raising the minimum wage. And so we're working together, and we will be pushing just as hard as we can at the state level. But, nobody wants us to stand here alone because we've got too many people who are unemployed in our city.
I understand that, but there's been peer-reviewed studies by MIT and others that have shown that there is no job loss, that the economic impact that you're worried about just hasn't happened. Over 100 places where the minimum wage has been raised, there hasn't.
But it is being raised. You're talking about 2026, so you don't know whether it's going to be raised by 2026 or not.
I'm talking about raising the minimum wage in a city higher than the surrounding jurisdictions.
I'm saying that you don't know what's going to happen in 2026. If you got a barometer that sees where we are in 2026, good luck to you.
But a plethora of studies, including those done by the nonpartisan think tank Economic Policy Institute, have shown that a $15 minimum wage would also raise wages for surrounding jurisdictions, not just the some 100,000 whose wages would be lifted in Baltimore.
It's interesting. Leadership from the surrounding jurisdictions would be against Baltimore raising its minimum wage. I can only assume that that's partially because they know if Baltimore were to raise its minimum wage, it would put pressure on businesses in their communities to also raise their wages in order to hang on to their workforce. In some ways, there's this sort of collusion among local governments to keep wages low.
And so I would imagine that someone working at a McDonald's in Catonsville wouldn't mind driving down, Edmondson Avenue to make a higher wage. But I would argue that that's actually would put pressure on the McDonald's in Catonsville to raise its wages in order to remain competitive and have a quality workforce. And so I think that which would put pressure on the county itself to meet that demand and make sure that they have quality workers as well that aren't flooding the city. And so I think in the short run, there may be some truth to that thinking, but in the long run, it's also important that folks in the county make a livable wage too.
Stay tuned to TheRealNews.com for updates to this story.